Ever wondered how an empire stretching from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea could be brought to its knees by a handful of rebellious city-states? This isn't just a story of battles and strategies. It's a tale of ambition, revenge, and a clash of civilizations that would shape the Western world forever. This is the story of the Greco-Persian Wars, a conflict born from the rage of the Persian Empire. Our story begins not with war, but with a visionary leader, Cyrus the Great. In the 6th century BCE, Cyrus forged the Achaemenid Empire, the largest the world had ever seen. He was known for his tolerance and respect for conquered peoples, a policy that made his empire remarkably stable. His successors, Cambyses II and then Darius the Great, continued this expansion. By the time Darius took the throne, Persia was a global superpower, a marvel of engineering, administration, and military might. The Royal Road, a highway stretching over 1,600 miles, connected the vast empire, and a sophisticated system of satraps, or governors, managed its diverse territories. The Persian military was legendary, headlined by the elite force known as the Immortals, a heavy infantry unit of 10,000 men, so named because their numbers were always maintained. If one fell, another immediately took his place. To the ancient world, Persia was invincible. But on the western edge of this mighty empire lay a region that was different. Ionia, a collection of Greek city-states on the coast of modern-day Turkey. These cities, like Miletus and Ephesus, were centers of philosophy, art, and commerce. Though they fell under Persian rule, they cherished their Greek identity and their tradition of independence. They chafed under the authority of Persian-appointed tyrants and the burden of tribute. The spark of rebellion was waiting for a chance to ignite. That chance came in 499 BCE. Aristagoras, the ambitious tyrant of Miletus, led the Ionian cities in a revolt against Persian rule. Knowing they couldn't stand alone, he sailed to mainland Greece for help. In Sparta, he was famously rejected. The Spartan king was unwilling to risk his army on a far-flung campaign. But in Athens, a burgeoning democracy with its own Ionian roots, Aristagoras found a more receptive audience. The Athenians, wary of growing Persian power and sympathetic to their Greek brethren, agreed to send 20 ships. The city of Eretria sent 5 more. It was a small force, but its impact would be monumental. In 498 BCE, the combined Greek force marched inland and did the unthinkable. They sacked and burned Sardis, the regional capital of the Persian Empire. The fire that consumed Sardis was more than just a military victory. It was a profound insult to the King of Kings, Darius the Great. The heart of his western territory had been violated. When Darius heard the news, his fury was immense. Legend has it that he ordered a servant to repeat 3 times at every meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." The Ionian revolt would eventually be crushed by 493 BCE. But for Darius, this was no longer about a regional rebellion. It was about vengeance. The sack of Sardis had made it personal. In 492 BCE, Darius launched his first punitive expedition against Greece. Led by his son-in-law Mardonius, a massive Persian fleet and armies set out to subdue the mainland. However, this campaign was doomed by nature, not by Greek arms. A violent storm off the coast of Mount Athos wrecked the Persian fleet, destroying hundreds of ships and ending the invasion before it truly began. But this setback only hardened Darius's resolve. He spent 2 years meticulously planning a second invasion, one that would not fail. This time, in 490 BCE, he would bypass the treacherous northern coast. A massive amphibious force under the command of Datis and Artaphons sailed directly across the Aegean Sea. Their mission was clear: punish Athens and Eretria for their role in burning Sardis. After island hopping and subjugating Greek cities along the way, the Persians landed at Eretria. The city was besieged, betrayed from within, and razed to the ground. Its citizens were enslaved, a grim warning to the rest of Greece. With one target down, the Persian fleet sailed on to its primary objective, Athens. Guided by Hippias, the exiled former tyrant of Athens, who hoped to be restored to power, the Persians landed at the Bay of Marathon, a flat plain perfect for their cavalry. The Athenians were in a state of panic. They were outnumbered and their allies were nowhere to be seen. They sent a runner, Theodopides, on a legendary journey to Sparta to beg for aid. The Spartans, in the middle of a religious festival, promised to come, but only after the full moon. Athens was on its own. The Athenian generals were divided. Some wanted to stay behind the city walls, hoping to withstand a siege. But one man, Meteoric, who had served under the Persians and knew their tactics, argued for a bold, decisive confrontation. He convinced the Athenians to march out and meet the invaders at Marathon. For several days, the two armies faced each other in a tense standoff. The Athenians, numbering around 10,000 hoplites, were positioned in the hills overlooking the plain, hesitant to face the larger Persian force and its dreaded cavalry on open ground. Then Meteoric saw his chance. The Persians, perhaps growing impatient, began to load their cavalry back onto the ships, possibly to sail round and attack Athens directly. With the Persian cavalry out of the equation, Meteoric ordered the attack. He devised a brilliant and risky strategy. He deliberately weakened the center of his battle line and reinforced the wings. As the Athenians charged across the plain, the Persian center, stronger and more numerous, pushed the Greek center back. But this was exactly what Meteoric had planned. The reinforced Greek wings then enveloped the Persian flanks, crushing them from both sides in a pincer movement. The Persian lines broke, and panic ensued. They fled in disarray back to their ships, pursued by the triumphant Athenians. The Battle of Marathon was a stunning, almost unbelievable victory. A small democratic city-state had defeated the army of a global superpower. The victory at Marathon was a watershed moment. It shattered the myth of Persian invincibility and filled the Athenians with a newfound confidence that would fuel their golden age. But they knew this was not the end. The rage of the Persian Empire was not so easily quenched. King Darius died before he could launch another invasion, but the task fell to his son and successor, Xerxes the Great. 10 years after Marathon, in 480 BCE, Xerxes assembled the largest invasion force the ancient world had ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers from every corner of the empire and a fleet of over 1,000 ships were mobilized for one purpose: the complete conquest of Greece. This time, there would be no mistakes. An army of engineers preceded the main force, building bridges and digging canals to avoid the disasters of the past. Facing this apocalyptic threat, the Greek city-states, so often at war with each other, did something remarkable. They united. Led by Sparta and Athens, they formed the Hellenic League, a pact to stand together or fall together. The stage was set for the most famous last stand in history. At the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae, a tiny Greek force of a few thousand, led by 300 Spartans, and their king, Leonidas, held off the massive Persian army for 3 days. At the same time, the allied Greek fleet engaged the Persian navy in the nearby Straits of Artemisium. The Greeks at Thermopylae were eventually betrayed and outflanked, but their sacrifice was not in vain. They had bought precious time for the rest of Greece and created a legend that would inspire generations. With Thermopylae fallen, the path to Athens was open. The city was evacuated, and the Persians marched in, burning it to the ground. For Xerxes, this was the ultimate revenge for the burning of Sardis. But the Athenian commander, Themistocles, had a final, desperate plan. He lured the massive Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their superior numbers would be a disadvantage. In the tight confines, the more nimble Greek triremes outmaneuvered and rammed the larger, clumsier Persian ships, resulting in a catastrophic defeat for Xerxes' navy. Watching from a throne on a nearby hillside, Xerxes saw his naval power decimated. With his sea lanes cut and fearing being trapped in Greece, Xerxes retreated with the bulk of his army, leaving his general Mardonius with a still formidable force to finish the conquest. The final showdown came the following year, in 479 BCE, at the Battle of Plataea. Here, the largest Greek army ever assembled, under Spartan leadership, decisively crushed Mardonius's forces. On the very same day, the remnants of the Persian fleet were destroyed by the Greek navy at the Battle of Mycale. The invasion was over. The Persian rage had been spent. The Greco-Persian Wars were a turning point in history. The unlikely Greek victory ensured the survival of a culture that would lay the foundations for Western philosophy, science, democracy, and art. The confidence born from these wars, particularly in Athens, sparked a golden age that produced wonders like the Parthenon and the plays of Sophocles. The story of Persia's rise and rage is a powerful reminder that history is not just made by the mighty, but also by the determined. It shows how the courage of a few can change the course of the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from history. See you next time.